It was U.S. aid that I fear much more than the CIA, because the U.S. aid is how CIA gets shit done.
USAID is clearly in the job of trying to bring about regime change. It has secret bank accounts, shell companies.
USAID gets $50 billion a year in U.S. taxpayer money. That's a larger overt fund than the CIA has.
USAID perhaps is the new CIA.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably.
This is not just about over there. This is about here.
They have a process, a system by which they destroy other nations, and they use that same process and system in order to destroy the United States.
It's a plot against our own people.
America, what if I told you that the United States government was acting like the world's Gestapo, using organizations like USAID under the pretense of humanitarian aid to topple governments, install politicians, and orchestrate regime changes in third world countries?
I disagree with that as somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat. Yeah. Not here, but, other places.
These are places that are practically entirely run at this point by the CIA and the U.S. State Department, which is, of course, a CIA front.
USAID provides most of the money.
This isn't a giveaway.
The State Department provides the policy vision.
This makes a difference to people's perception of us. Tricky endeavors, whether it's fighting terrorism,
Al-Shabaab groups in USAID camps,
or narcotics.
Joe Biden's State Department is commanding the Taliban to keep the opium flowing.
Or oppression or resistance to governance.
Those USAID trucks were stopped at the border to Venezuela with fully automatic weapons.
All of those things.
I don't think that's humanitarian aid.
What a difference that makes.
And if we stand for democracy anywhere, we have to stand for it everywhere, including in Guatemala.
Guatemala, what if I told you that USAID, the State Department, and the CIA created a fraudulent political party and then used that illegitimate party to rig the 2023 Guatemalan election so they could install a list of CIA-controlled politicians who would continue to allow them to run the world's largest child trafficking network out of Guatemala?
Nothing to do with that? Correlation, not causation?
That is absurd.
They didn't deny it, which means that they admitted it.
This is no question, a political shocker in Guatemala.
The U.S. government, the Biden administration, helped cover up voter fraud.
Why Guatemala? Why not some other country?
Guatemala is concerned about child trafficking, the NGOs that are trafficking the children.
Jill Biden was the chairman of the board of Save the Children.
You guys just raided Save the Children.
Guess who stepped in? The State Department, U.S. Embassy, and USAID. Another coincidence?
America, what if I told you that DHS, under the direct orders of Alejandro Mayorkas, would create a public-private partnership with Mexican cartels, and that HHS, under the direct orders of Xavier Becerra, would create a public-private partnership with NGOs like Save the Children and Southwest Key Programs. And in this quasi-public-private partnership, they would use your tax dollars to fund the world's largest international child trafficking operation.
As to whom we know where they are, that is outside the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security.
This is nothing but lies. Nothing but lies.
Secretary Mayorkas, he acts like none of this ever happens.
It's his policies that caused over 500,000 of children being smuggled in this country.
And he also knew who to blame.
HHS places those children.
That's on you.
Was that a question to me?
Are you familiar with the sponsors that utilize a strip club as an address? You shrug your shoulders and then send another batch of kids out to sponsor.
Human trafficking bust at an egg farm. Federal prosecutors call it modern-day slavery.
Of course, we investigate cases of trafficking.
Another lie.
You've actually inspired me because I get hesitant to give the kind of details that I've given in this interview. I've never done it before.
Their day is either spent being attacked, raped, or assaulted. And then when that's not going on, wondering if they're going to eat. There are some times that they don't get to sleep for 24 hours. If those traffickers have men lined up.
To describe it to you is, you wouldn't even believe it. I've had to watch infants be raped by adult males. Literally watching, you know, an adult male penis go in and just break apart the child. Rip, skin ripping, bone crushing.
The person purchasing the trafficked victim, they want a young child who can feel what's going on.
And the louder the kid screams, the harder they go. That's what they're into.
In the sense that we have a crisis of human smuggling and trafficking that you can't even turn to the federal government now for help.
When I walked on site, my first question to one of the supervisors was, where's the FBI Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force? Where do we report these cases? Because I naively assumed that they were actually interested in combating trafficking.
We're betraying everything that is the American heritage, the American legacy. And we need to reverse that. And I think we have hope in President Trump.
People don't talk about, the press doesn't talk about one of the great scandals in history. Missing sex slaves or dead.
They'll kill one of those trafficked victims.
Hear this, you vile, wretched predators who dare to lay your filthy, stained hands on God's children. Your days of darkness are numbered. Men like me, fueled by the divine wrath, are coming for you. We are God's army, and we will hunt you down with the ferocity of 1,000 storms. You thought you could hide in the shadows, that your sins would remain secret. No more. We know your faces, we know your names, and we are coming to strip away the vial of your deceit. You will feel the terror that you've afflicted upon the innocent. Every child that you've harmed cries out for justice, and we are the answer to that cry. You thought you were untouchable, but you've underestimated the power of God's vengeance. We will not rest, we will not tire, until every one of you is brought to justice. The night is no longer your ally, it is your prison. Your sanctuary of sin will become your tombs. Prepare yourself, for we are relentless. We will not show mercy where you showed none. You have sown terror, and now you will reap it tenfold. We are the light that pierces through your darkness, the sword that cuts through your lies. There is no corner of earth where you can hide from us. So tremble, for you have defiled the innocent. Live in fear, for every step that you take, we are right behind you. We are God's army, and we are coming for you. This is your final warning, and repent is no longer an option. The full wrath of the Almighty Himself awaits you. The hunt is on, and you are now the prey. Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Save the Children were engaging in behavior that led to the rape, murder, disappearance of thousands of Guatemalan children. And that's a US-based NGO.
And strangely, a huge number of these kids are coming from Guatemala.
A lot of people may not realize how vulnerable the Guatemalan children are because they're speaking Mayan dialects, which means they can't ask for help in Spanish. They really become a victim population.
A very large portion of these kids are missing children in their own home countries. Their parents have no idea that they're in Detroit.
And Guatemala is investigating.
Are you aware of the position held by the president's wife in that organization previously at Save the Children?
No, we didn't know that.
They want to investigate Save the Children. They want to investigate the election. And all of a sudden, here comes Blinken, here comes the State Department, here comes USAID.
The most egregious crime the State Department has committed was directing an electoral fraud to put in their communist puppet as president of Guatemala last year.
They didn't want them to get to the bottom of raping and murdering and disappearing children. They didn't want that to happen.
If you have watched my previous film, Operation Amber Alert, or you follow my journey, you are aware by now that these projects are entirely self-funded. After releasing What is Treason #Trafficked with J.J. Carroll and initially putting it behind a paywall, I realized that this approach wasn't just un-American, it was counterproductive to our cause. To generate enough public outrage, at least 10 million people need to see this documentary. That's why I've decided to fund the Operation Amber Alert series myself. No partners, no sponsors, no strings attached. But this means I'm 100% resilient on your support to keep this operation going. At the time of filming this documentary, my Give, Send, Go campaign has raised around $17,000 since the premiere of my first Operation Amber Alert film on November 25th. That means that I've taken about a $7,000 loss to bring this story to light. People often question why I placed #traffic behind a paywall. Now you understand that I can't keep producing these films if I'm hemorrhaging thousands of dollars. I had to leave my position at LFA TV, which means the only income I have now comes from the $250 I earn monthly on X and the $250 from monthly supporters. Every dollar is a testament to our collective mission to expose the truth. Imagine if you could, skipping just one cup of coffee. The small sacrifice could be fuel for our fight for justice. By becoming a paid subscriber on X or Rumble, you are not just supporting a cause, you are joining a movement. If we can rally 3,000 hearts to contribute $5 each a month, together, we can release a new documentary every 60 days. You're not just donating, you're becoming a vital part of something much greater than ourselves. A beacon of hope and change in a world that desperately needs it. You can donate directly by going to my Give, Send, Go at givesendgo.com/Operation Amber Alert, or head over to X at Ryan Matta Media and click the subscribe button to become a monthly supporter. Alternatively, you can click the money icon to see other donation options as well, which include my favorite, Bitcoin. Every little bit helps, and together we can shine a light where darkness has prevailed for far too long. God bless you. All right, America, listen up because I'm not going to sugarcoat this shit for you. Anthony Blinken and the State Department, alongside with Samantha Powers at USAID and the CIA, are balls deep in orchestrating a full-blown coup in Guatemala. They didn't just meddle, they rigged the 2023 presidential election. But wait, there's more. They tried to covertly assassinate the Attorney General of Guatemala, who just so happens to be the only person with the authority to investigate the election fraud. How did they pull this off, you may ask? By unleashing a horde of Antifa-style mercenaries, all courtesy of NGOs funded by your hard-earned tax dollars. This isn't just interference, it's a goddamn assault on Guatemala's democracy and their justice system. Check out this video where Anthony Blinken's goon squad is literally breaking down the gates to the Attorney General's home. And this next one, it shows the violent clowns after they breach the gate outside of her house. After they breach the gate, you can hear the neighbors who are terrified because there's an angry mob outside terrorizing the neighborhood. The guys are even pulling back this foliage, revealing the AG's address, and that's when you hear somebody say, "We can't go any further, it's private property." But do you think that stopped these goons? Fuck no. They stormed and vandalized the place, and they literally took a piss and they shit all over the Attorney General's home. Now, allegedly, the Guatemalan ringleader behind this operation goes by the name of Kiki Godoy, but that's just what a little birdie told me. So stay tuned for Operation Amber Alert Part 2. We're gonna expose every one of these scumbags. Now let's flip the script, America.
America has subverted, sabotaged, and strangled democracies all around the world.
At least they're being honest at this point. They're no longer pretending like Obama did.
We do it because it's right. They've toppled governments, assassinated elected officials, fixed elections.
By one count, the United States has interfered in more than 80 foreign elections, and that doesn't count U.S.-backed coups and invasions.
They're using so-called aid money to just blatantly bankroll coup attempts.
It just is what it is, though. We have to be honest with the American people about what we're actually doing.
Bribed and bullied and bulldozed democracies on every continent for a century. But somehow you think that they're not going to do that in your country.
They cheated! They're cheaters!
Well, how naive can you be?
This election was rigged. Everybody knows it. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. This was a massive fraud.
They use the same machinery, they use the same systems in order to steal elections.
We won in 2016, and if you really remember it, if you want to play it straight, we also won in 2020.
A similar system of basically fraudulent ballots, creating fraudulent ballots.
When they started counting the votes, there weren't enough ballots. Ballots were missing.
Which is what we have here. We have all the information related to the theft of the election in 2023.
The people that are in power right now were on the 8th place and nobody knew them.
Where the number 8 poll across the country never moved up. Number 8, 2 to 4% of the vote of the people in every poll ends up winning the president of Guatemala.
How can a candidate who was in 8th place suddenly come out ahead in the election? It's uncalled for.
Our government was imposed by a foreign government to cover up what they have been doing for years.
It is unbelievable. It's unbelievable the behavior that they did in Guatemala and other countries. And that's the same behavior that they pushed out and did in the United States.
Just like that Ukrainian prosecutor, and just as we saw in Ukraine, there's clear signs this pressure campaign is working. Whatever's about to happen in Guatemala, it seems obvious that the Biden administration is involved in some way.
Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, there's still...
Let's call this for what it really is. Hunter Biden's Ukraine Burisma scandal 2.0. But this time, it's not Joe Biden, it's Anthony Blinken. And instead of Hunter, we got Jill Biden in the mix. We're going to unpack all of this. But first, let's lay down some cold hard facts. Fact number 1. I got the lowdown on every cent the US government tossed at Guatemala over the last 12 years by hiring Randall Land, a private investigating firm. And big shout out to the badass investigative journalist Kim Wexler, MAJD over on X, for making the connection. Fact number 2. Over a 4-year period from 2020 to 2024, the US government, through US aid and shady NGOs, funneled in $796,863,594 into Guatemala. What does Guatemala have to show for it? 200,000 missing children.
This topic is really close to our hearts here in Guatemala because we have had close friends in our family that have dealt with this situation in the past. It's the same NGOs that are implicated in one thing and the other. As you mentioned it, 250,000 children have been trafficked from this country to other places of the world that we know about. That's what we know about. You can imagine the whole bunch of kids that have not been registered throughout the borders or throughout the hospitals, local hospitals.
Fact number 3, from 2012 to 2024, over a decade, the US government funneled in $4,046,986,932 into Guatemala through grants, contracts, loans, and direct payment. It looks like the deep state is using our hard-earned tax dollars to transform Guatemala into the child kidnapping capital of the world.
They are covering it up with the biggest electoral fraud that happened here in Guatemala. They imposed this government to cover all their things that they have been doing for the past 4 years, for the past 12, 17, 20 years. And so they imposed the government. And that's how they cover up all these things that you've been mentioning right now.
Now, that's one hell of an accusation. But let's dive into the grim details to see if it holds up. Listen up and listen good. Before we dive into the mess of rigged elections, assassination plots, and government overthrows, you need to grasp the sheer magnitude of this military-style child trafficking operation being ran by the United States government. This will give you a real taste of just how corrupt this system can be. According to ORR's official data, published on a government website, the Office of Refugee Resettlement reports that on January 1st, 2021 to October 1st, 2024, the U.S. government has taken custody of over 452,122 migrant children. These are migrant children between the ages of 0 and 17 who have arrived at the southern border without a parent. I want to be very clear on this part, America. The second that these children step foot on U.S. soil, they instantly become property of the United States government. So let's break this down, America, because this is going to blow your gosh damn mind. The University of Michigan seats 100,000 people. You see that on your screen right now. Now brace yourself. Picture that stadium at max capacity, then duplicate that 4.5 times over. That would be the equivalent of how many children this administration has trafficked into America. And we're not talking about just stadiums. We are talking about entire countries. Malta, with its population size of 502,000, could be completely swapped out for the number of children trafficked into America by the time that this documentary releases. Now, let's swing over to ORR's website, specifically the fact and data page. There, in black and white on an official US government website, you can see the cold hard numbers. Scroll down to the country of origin section and you'll find the grim list of top countries where these children are being kidnapped and trafficked into America by Mexican cartels. The top 4 countries in order are Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico. Let's start with number 1, Guatemala. In 2021, the number of children trafficked into America skyrocketed by 540%. The figure jumped from 16,837 under the Trump administration in 2020 to a staggering 107,646 during Biden's first year in office. 47% were from Guatemala. In 2022, 127,447 unaccompanied migrant children were trafficked into America. 47% were from Guatemala. In 2023, 113,495 unaccompanied migrant children were trafficked into America. 42% were from Guatemala. In 2024, 99,381 unaccompanied migrant children were trafficked into America. 32% were from Guatemala. Now let's break down exactly how many of these children were kidnapped from Guatemala. Starting in 2021, 50,593. In 2022, 59,990. In 2023, 47,667. In 2024, 31,802. That means that over a 4-year period, 190,052 children were lured, sold, or kidnapped in Guatemala and trafficked into the United States of America. Now, before we break this down, I want you to take a look at this data from 2024. It was shocking. For the first time since tracking began, the percentage of unaccompanied alien children, UACs, trafficked from Guatemala to the US hit a record low. On April 25th, 2024, the Attorney General's office raided 5 NGOs in Guatemala, all linked to a massive trafficking network. Now, I'm sure it's just a coincidence that 6 months later, the amount of children being trafficked out of Guatemala into America decreased by 23% for the first time in history. This should serve as a critical wake-up call for Guatemalans. Every NGO funded by US aid or any US tax dollars should be investigated to the fullest extent of the law. Now let's get back on track. As of January 1st, 2025, Guatemalans' population size was 18,530,000. Now chew on this. Over 1% of their entire population has just vanished into thin air. But don't stop there. It gets even more demonic. According to the CIA World Factbook, there are about 7.1 million children living in Guatemala who are under the age of 18. If we take that 190,000 and we divide that by 7.1 million, you get a chilling 2.7%. Here's the harsh reality. Since Joe Biden took office, nearly 3% of Guatemala's children have been abducted and trafficked into the United States.
With Guatemala taking the lead as the so-called capital of international child trafficking operations, as this chart shows.
Over 200,000 children have been trafficked out of this country, Guatemala, and Save the Children is implicated in this.
This isn't merely a statistic. It's a deep scar in our nation's conscience. It's an outright national disgrace.
The government was trafficking children out of Guatemala, out of orphanages, for the sex trade.
They're harvesting the victims from Guatemala. They're picking them out, like they're going shopping for shoes. Your statement really struck me, Secretary. The way you described the child trafficking that's occurring in your country.
Remember the Russians a decade ago said you can't adopt kids from here anymore, you're doing horrible things to them? You cannot have a more evil group of people than what we have running our government.
We're going to be very transparent. We're going to get behind who in the administration, the Biden administration, opened the doors on this humanitarian crisis. What NGOs were involved in this. We're going to be very transparent to American people, and we're going to tell them the truth what happened on this border.
You say that the left media has it backwards, branding you as the bad guy. How are you the bad guy?
We're in a situation now where the left thinks those who enforce the laws are the bad guys, those who broke the law are the victims. Well, we're going to change that after January 20th. And also, as President Trump is committed, we're going to deputize every U.S. citizen in this country to help us find 340,000 missing children, because we need the public's help on this.
Let's be clear, America. Those 340,000 children, they didn't go missing overnight. By March 20th of 2021, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR, had admitted to Congress that they had lost over 20,000 migrant children.
Again, not answering a phone call, that does not mean a child.
You have dropped them off at a sponsor's house. You now can't get a hold of them. That's on you. What do you do after that? What I'm hearing back is you don't do anything. You shrug your shoulders and then send another batch of kids out to another group of sponsors' homes.
I know you've lost contact with these children, and now we're told that when you lose contact with these children, it's not being lost. But it is being lost.
By February 23rd of 2023, the New York Times published their investigation titled Alone and Exploited. Migrant children work brutal jobs across the U.S., which exposed how ORR could not find over 85,000 migrant children.
The New York Times, actually, this is not a Republican rag, by the way. I reported in February of 2023, HHS had lost over 85,000 unaccompanied children.
I think you're telling us that you don't disagree with the 85,000 number of children that we lost contact with, and we don't know where those kids are.
We do not track or monitor.
The answer is no. There are 85,000 kids who came across the border. We don't know. Is that right? Apparently it is.
ORR.
By August 28th of 2024, ORR admitted to losing 323,000 migrant children.
Would you change anything that you've done in the last 4 years with 320,000 children unaccounted for by your administration?
What do you have to say for yourself, Mr. Secretary? This is the end of this administration. It's the end of your tenure. What do you have to say for yourself?
Recognizing that we don't deal with immigration, that is part of DHS's authority. We deal with the care, the human services side of care for kids.
Mr. Secretary, when the history of this administration is written, I would not want to be you looking back on what historians say about your tenure. I'm sorry, but that's the fact.
On December 14th, Tom Homan admitted that HHS had lost track of over 340,000 migrant children.
Every mom and dad knows what it's like. They have a gut feeling when they see something out there in the public that there's something ain't right with that child. So we're going to deputize every one of them to help us find over 340,000 missing children, which many of them are going to be in the city. So
let's pause for a moment here. Since Biden took office, our government has taken custody of over 452,121 children. And out of that number, we've lost 340,000. That's 75% of the total, which is absolutely mind-blowing. This means that the United States, the supposed leader of the free world, has taken in over 190,000 children from Guatemala alone and lost 142,500 of them. This is a gosh damn humanitarian crisis.
It's deplorable that so many of us are scandalized by human rights violations in these other countries that I named, like China, North Korea, Syria. But these are human rights violations. They're happening right here. We know about it. It's in numbers of thousands, and we act like it's not happening, or it just happens in other countries, but not us.
Greta, it's hundreds of thousands of children they can't account for. Hundreds of thousands.
500,000 children, we don't know where they are right now in this country.
I mean, if it was an American child and you found somebody working 2 a.m. in a factory, what would you do? Call the parents and say, what's going on? When it comes to the immigrant children, we don't care.
There's a level of hypocrisy that everyone that states they want to protect everyone but innocent individuals who are victims of crimes and children.
And we have delivered them to criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations who are using the UC program as a white glove delivery service of children.
The United States of America is the #1 consumer of all hard narcotics, the #1 consumer of child porn, and the #1 consumer of child rape. America is not a country you want to be lost in. Just ask Tim Ballard.
Literally, it is more difficult, and I'm saying this literally, it's more difficult to adopt a cat from a shelter than it is to go down and claim sponsorship of a child and take possession of that child. And now we know hundreds of thousands of children who showed up at our borders unaccompanied are now disappeared into the belly of the beast. And why do I call America the belly of the beast? Because we are the #1 consumers of child sexual exploitation material in the world, thus making us probably the highest demand for child sex in the world. So this is not a country you want to be lost in.
Human trafficking is worse now than it's ever been in the history of our world. It's a U.S. problem, but it's a world problem.
One little girl I can tell you about, in fact, I introduced this little girl to Miss Trump during a private briefing. This little girl was kidnapped in Central America, 11 years old, groomed for 2 years, with the intent of getting her ready to come to America. Why? Because we are the highest consuming nation of child pornography. We are the clientele that's the big money. I remember talking to that young girl who I testified about her story in Congress, she was actually in the room with me and helped me prepare the testimony. She wanted her story told. And she said, look, once I made it to New York City, I was a nobody. I didn't have a name, I didn't have Social Security, no one knew I even existed because there was no wall, there was no process. And so I think she estimated that she was raped around 30,000 plus times over the course of her life between 13 and 16 when she rescued herself. But this is happening to hundreds of thousands of children, likely.
And you have many thousands of people like this.
Thousands. This is happening all the time.
Let me ask you this, America. Do you remember seeing 10, 20, or 30 children behind a Walmart eating out of a dumpster? No, me neither. Do you remember seeing thousands of children on the side of the road begging for money? No, me neither. So let me ask you this, America. How the hell did the United States government lose 340,000 children?
There were 291 released without NTAs. That blows my mind. If there is one tool,
Notice to appear?
notice to appear, sorry. If there is one tool that you can give a child to help prevent them to be trafficked, it is a notice to appear.
The government then tracks them based on who gets an NTA and who shows up for that date. So take a look at this. They're saying that 291,000 were never given an NTA or a court date. So the government did not have any way to follow them. So we know they existed. They crossed the border. We never gave them a document. And then we don't know. We have no idea where they are.
That was the only thing that I had as a case manager to tell them, you can go talk to anybody you want to if anybody is treating you wrong. And I told it to all the children. I don't care if I believe they were going to their parents or not. You have the right to get help because no matter what anyone tells you, you have the right to be here in this country. Now, I agree that any child, whether they have a notice to appear or not, can go get help. But that piece of paper provided them something tangible to tell them that they were here and that we recognize them. And they released 291,000 children without even that little piece of paper.
And the U.S. government admits that means they are probably being trafficked. Again, here's from the government report that those are considered higher risk for trafficking, exploitation, or forced labor.
There's a recent case I learned about where like 30 kids unaccompanied showed up at the same address in Austin, Texas. Like stuff like that's happening. Like, what are you doing? But we're finding them. Slave labor is a big thing. You know, meatpacking plants are taking these kids.
Under punishing working conditions on factory floors, inside slaughterhouses, and atop buildings with children working as roofers.
We're finding them in situations that you just described where they're being just sex trafficked out on the daily.
They were put into the hands of someone who claimed to be their aunt, and that aunt was selling the child for sex. We have documented cases of this.
Or it could just be a single pedophile or a child exploitation producer who needs a kid.
Stefan Young is accused of taking pictures of kids as young as 13 in their underwear, and they say sometimes in the nude. And the sheriff says that this guy knew that he would be in trouble if word got out.
And he said, but listen, if Grady Judd finds out, we're in trouble. Because, see, he'll take art and make it pornography.
That's where they're ending up.
I mean, they're not invisible. They weren't just, they didn't come through. The government knows they're here. How is this happening?
You just got to have the phone number of the trafficker, and the trafficker will make sure and put your phone number on the kid's arm. That's what's happening, right? Or on a little piece of paper, safety pin to their shirt, and they come across and it says sponsor with a phone number. And I've watched it happen.
Niños sin padres? Sí. Muchos? ¿Cuándo lo hacen?
Pues casi todo el tiempo.
I mean, I've been in with some of these kids end up in an NGO, and I'm not blaming all of the NGOs, but they now know what's going on. Maybe in the beginning they didn't, but they now know what's going on, and I'm very disappointed that more of them are not coming out and saying it. But what I sit there and watch them do it. They take the number, they call it. Hello, I have, what's your name? Roberto Gonzalez, 5 years. Yeah, that's my nephew. Okay, and by the way, it used to be to say, can we schedule time for you to come pick him up? Not anymore. Now it's, what's your address? And the taxpayer dollar will pay for his delivery to your house. And then there's no follow-up. The few that admit, like when they try to call, it's like the wrong number, the number's changed. I don't know what you're talking about, and that's about as far as they go. I'm like, oh, well, I guess they're gone.
Here's the hard truth. Over 452,121 children have been trafficked into the U.S. from 180 countries. So we have to start asking ourselves, why and how is this happening? Starting with the why. An article titled, "It Costs the Government $775 a Night to Keep Migrant Children in Tent Cities" was published on June 20th of 2018. So that means that these NGOs are making around $775 per day per child to keep them locked inside these for-profit child detention facilities. Now, according to investigative journalist Todd Bensman and the Center for Immigration Studies, the ORR shelter system and Southwest Key programs, including what they call influx shelters, provide around 17,500 beds for unaccompanied alien children, mainly in private facilities funded through HHS contracts or grants, meaning your tax dollars. Let's break this down. With 17,500 beds at $775 per day per child, that's 17,500 times 775 equals $13,562,500 per day. Now multiply that daily cost by 365 days in a year, and you'll get a total of $4,950,312,500 per year. So these NGOs are making $5 billion a year if they can keep these facilities at max capacity. So let's be absolutely clear on this. We are essentially funding these NGOs to the tune of $5 billion a year to operate what essentially functions as a safe house for the US government's child trafficking operation. These children are housed in these facilities while the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, works to arrange their transfer to a buyer within the United States. I label these facilities as a stash house because that's precisely their function. Future history books will dedicate volumes to detailing how the United States government crafted a system to funnel kidnapped children from 180 different nations into America. The moment these children cross the border and step foot on US soil, they become property of the US government. From that point on, the responsibility to safeguard these children fell squarely on the US government.
These children didn't sneak into the US undetected. The federal government knows they're here, and the Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for matching them with sponsors.
Health and Human Services is responsible for these children. They are paid billions of dollars to ensure the safety of these children, and they have failed.
Because Becerra, the secretary of HHS, he gets on stage and brags. And I saw him on a stage bragging how quick we release these kids from government custody. We got a machine here. It's like the Ford plant. We get them in and out of here. Yeah, because you stopped the proper vetting, you stopped the DNA testing, and God help you for what you did to these children.
We use a number of tools to make sure we can identify the child and certainly do the background checks on anyone who wishes to be a sponsor.
This includes conducting separate interviews with the child and sponsor.
You never see them face to face.
Collecting and verifying sponsor information and documentation.
We used WhatsApp to receive documents, which in some cases were copies of copies.
Administering background checks, address verification.
Children were sent to addresses that were abandoned houses or non-existent in some cases.
Public records and sex offender registry checks, as well as FBI checks in certain cases.
The rule I'm talking about says you do not.
I'm sorry?
The rule that we're talking about that was released on April 30th, 2024 says you do not.
We do not what?
That you do not carry out FBI national criminal history checks for all potential sponsors.
We do background checks on every individual.
Right, but that's a slippery description. What I'm saying is this rule is pretty clear in what it's saying, that you do not provide the kind of background checks.
And once they're released by the government to these people who are supposed to take care of them, there's no follow-up for the majority of these kids. They get a phone number for a hotline that they can call. And several of these children told us that they ended up in real trafficking situations, called the hotline and never heard back.
Are you familiar with those cases? Did you bother to even look in these? It sounds like you didn't.
What I can tell you is today's ORR, we are hearing, we're listening, we're making sure sponsors and children have more information. They know how to get help.
They're complicit. ORR is complicit in what's going on. They're fully aware. They are fully aware of what's going on, and they, one, don't care. Two, their budget gets slashed if they all of a sudden don't have children to run through. And it'd be interesting to follow the money to see if there's other kickbacks coming back to them.
They planned this out. They've got lobbyists. How do you get millions, literally millions of children? There's millions of children in sex slavery, not to mention the adults. When you get to the whole number, it's close to 40 million people. That means that many people are in the market. There's a market for that exists, otherwise we couldn't have those numbers. That market couldn't exist without some government compliance to it, without lobbyists, people doing things.
Mr. Secretary, I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children.
And I think if you start researching many of these government contractors, especially DynCorp, you will see just how deep the tentacles go into our government. They are, operating the Pentagon. They're operating our international security systems. They're operating our airport. It goes on and on. They're collecting child support in the states.
Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls?
No. Absolutely not.
Well, how do you explain the fact that DynCorp and its successor companies have received and continue to receive government contracts?
I would have to go and find the facts.
You sit in your tax dollars so that the government can be involved in sex trafficking of little children. Boy, aren't we happy to be Americans paying taxes today?
Yeah, I think people just don't know. I do believe that if people really understood that their tax dollars were being used by contractors and NGOs who were making hundreds of millions of dollars, I think people don't understand. This is a multi-billion-dollar program.
Someone else came in and saw a way to make a dollar. And the way to make the dollar is to move the children. If that means that they go to traffickers, they go to traffickers.
Yeah, these NGOs, because then you go after them for transporting these children across state lines.
Yes. The staffing agency that I work for that continues to take on these kinds of contracts. I walked away from that staffing agency because I had made them aware of what had gone on at Pomona. And they would not put mitigations in place. They would not put training in place when they got a new contract for that opportunity to provide staffing for a shelter, for multiple shelters. I'm not going to make money off the backs of trafficked children. So I walked away from that, and I had to.
At this point, I think so many people have come forward. You've had several people from the Pomona Fairplex, courageous warriors like Deborah White and Myra Moreno. You've had MVM whistleblower Carlos Ariano come forward and say, the children are saying they don't know who they're going to. The children are saying, please, I don't want to go here. They're forced to reunite. And so I would hope that at this point, people are aware and they need to come forward. Right now, if you work for the Department of Health and Human Services or you work for a contractor or NGO, you need to seriously examine your heart.
Do these NGOs know this when they go into it, or do they find out about it after they get into it, and then after they're into it, they turn a blind eye because the money's too good?
But there's a case to sue them. If those trafficking victims go through those shelters by a case manager that they staff, there is that case. And I really think, maybe it's a comment on our society, but I really think that it's by mitigating that financial gain is where we as a society can start to attack this incident of trafficking.
This is why the lawsuits stemming from this humanitarian disaster could very well bankrupt this nation. Think about the massive payouts the parents of these kidnapped Guatemalan children might receive. Remember the Sandy Hook defamation lawsuit against Alex Jones in April of 2018? In October and November of 2022, Alex Jones was ordered to pay a total of $1.4 billion in damages.
That's the stunning amount a jury in Connecticut has ordered conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to pay the families of 8 Sandy Hook massacre victims.
Now, I've already apologized to the parents over and over again. I don't apologize to you.
Objection.
Don't apologize to you.
$10 million is more money than I can get them.
Of course.
$50 million is more. $1 billion, it's all a joke at this point. It's like saying...
Now, Alex Jones never laid a hand on a child. He only spoke words, and yet families got $1.4 billion for emotional distress. Now, imagine what the parents of these Guatemalan children will receive when our government took custody of their child and allowed them to be raped in facilities funded with our tax dollars.
We're not the bad guys. We're the good guys. We're the people that are taking these kids.
Massive investigation into Southwest Key, the allegations of sex crimes against undocumented migrant children.
Putting them in a shelter.
And intimidating them.
To kill their families if they disclose the abuse.
Providing the best service that we can for them.
It includes solicitation of nude photos, sexual abuse, rape, leering, and inappropriate touching.
And reuniting them with their family.
many unaccompanied children have gone missing while under the organization's watch.
We've had previous staff members who have run away with kids and they've fallen in love with them.
And that's what this is all about.
Southwest Key has multiple shelters across Texas, California, and Arizona. They help children from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador who come to the U.S. to escape dangerous conditions.
Once they get here, we're supposed to be protecting them. We're the government of the United States of America. You know, how can we be turning them over to a company that's allowing this to go on?
Who's going to take care of these kids? Who? We don't take them. Somebody else is going to take them.
The emotional distress that these parents have gone through will allow them to make millions, if not billions, in lawsuits, not to mention the book deals and the movie deals that will come from this. The emotional distress that these parents have gone through will allow them to make millions, if not billions, in lawsuits, not to mention the book deals and the movie deals that will come from this. Speaking of emotional distress and lawsuits, let's head over to the Department of Justice's website and examine the lawsuit filed against Southwest Key Programs, the largest child trafficking NGO in America. This is an official government document, so the facts here are indisputable. Since at least 2015, multiple Southwest Key employees, including supervisory and non-supervisory employees, have subjected children living at Southwest Key shelter care homes to severe, pervasive, and unwelcome sexual abuse and harassment, included as documented by Southwest Key reports. This conduct includes, but is not limited to: A. Employees perpetrating sexual assault and rape of children, including sexual contact in the manner of genital to genital and oral to genital contact. B. Employees intentionally touching, either directly or through the clothing, the genitalia, the anus, groin, breast, inner thigh, and buttocks of the children. C. Employees soliciting, requesting, coercing, and inducing the above described acts with children. D. Employees soliciting, requesting, coercing, and inducing nude or sexually explicit photos of children. E. Employees making repeated, unwelcomed, and unwanted entreaties for sexually inappropriate relationships with children. F. Employees making sexual comments and gestures to children. G. Employees engaging in voyeurism and leering at children with the intent to abuse, arouse, or gratify sexual desire. Are you paying attention, America? This is not some minor issue. If we were to go through each one of these cases one by one, it would take me a solid 20 minutes just to list them all. That's how many kids are being abused in these facilities.
We moved so many kids out of this shelter that the capacity is just, it never really hits, but that's how many kids are being escorted.
How many? How many does this thing hold? You say 2,000?
It holds 2,000, but when I was around here, the amount of kids in there would be around 1,000, 1,200. And this is all teenagers.
And this is Southwest Key Corps?
Southwest Key Programs.
He knows what he did was wrong and it was doing dirt, but he's self-rescued. He wasn't like caught by the cops doing this. The cops all know what's happening. Like you said last night, what really needs to happen is a huge SWAT team needs to hit one of these places.
They do.
And go down there with every SWAT man in the whole county and multiple counties around it. Take all these children, because like Carlos and others have said, these children want to go home. They're often like not in the country they came from. They're not, their parents are back in the country of their origin and they want to go back. They're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to leave like the Walmart facility in Brownsville. They're literally prisoners in that Walmart. They're prisoners. And as Carlos said, if the kids are really good, a few of them get to go to the McDonald's nearby, right? And the girls are kept in a different facility. He talked about so many fights that the kids have to go to the hospital and this sort of thing. And it's horrific.
The employees are doing this. Threats of violence to kids who don't speak English, but telling them they will murder their families back home. All kinds of abuses.
85% of children who are sexually assaulted don't report it, specifically boys. So when we're talking about children, where 80% have been raped or assaulted on their way to America, and we put them into this environment, and they've been abused by every adult that's been around them over the last year, how many of these children do you think report their abuse? But let me hit you with 3 examples so we can make this picture crystal clear. Example number 1, numerous Southwest Key reports detail a Southwest Key youth care worker who in 2020 absconded with a 15-year-old boy from Casa Cocopelli in Arizona. The Southwest Key youth care worker took the boy to a hotel room for several days, where the youth care worker paid him for sex acts. This youth care worker, indicted in Maricopa County Supervisory Court with multiple felony counts of sexual misconduct with a minor, and he pled guilty in March of 2022 to felony attempted sexual conduct with a minor. Sounds almost like a slap on the wrist, doesn't it? Maricopa County. Guess that's the town you want to get busted in sexually abusing a child.
Who's going to take care of these kids? Who?
Where is the oversight? Where is the accountability? You see, that is the problem with human trafficking. A lot of people are making a lot of money. A lot of money.
And it pisses some people off. God, many Latinos that I know of run a $500 million company. And you won't find anybody in the city, I don't think, that you can say they run a $500 million company that they've built themselves.
We have the money to put people on buses and fly them around the country, but we're not spending money to protect kids.
Example 2. Another Southwest Key report describes a Southwest Key shift leader, a supervisory employee, who in 2019 repeatedly raped, abused, and threatened a teenage girl throughout her shelter stay at Casa Montezuma in Channelview, Texas. The child reported the abuse by passing a note to her teacher on a day when she knew that the shift leader was out of the country on vacation. Her note stated that the shift leader was having sex with her at the shelter and threatening her to remain silent. She wrote, "He can do whatever he pleases because he is a shift leader. He's the boss." She also reported that she believed that Southwest Key employees were covering to protect the shift leader because, among other things, he would regularly switch assignments with other staff so that he could be alone with her. Staff also commented about the amount of time the shift leader spent with the child. The child further reported that the shift leader had solicited nude photos of her and demanded videos of her touching herself. He made her perform oral sex on him, and he had threatened that if she reported the abuse, she would be hospitalized. And this child account, it was corroborated by video footage of the shift leader entering her bedroom and her journal, which documented the abuse. In addition, employees observed the shift leader's failure to follow bedroom check policies, as he was routinely entering the child's bedroom, as well as entering the bedroom of other children, for periods of time without other employees present. Following her report, the child was transferred to a different shelter. Let that sink in, America. Following her report, the child was transferred to a different shelter.
Immigration and federal litigation attorney George Lobb calls it a, quote, disgusting result of putting profits over people.
We've also been very successful now. And it pisses some people off. Maybe even you, I don't know. That upsets you, the fact that how could you be successful?
Now, example 3. One Southwest Key report describes a Southwest Key youth care worker who, in 2022, repeatedly sexually abused a 5-year-old girl, an 8-year-old girl, and an 11-year-old girl at Casa Franklin in El Paso, Texas. The 8-year-old girl disclosed that the youth care worker repeatedly entered their bedroom in the middle of the night to touch their private areas, and he threatened to kill their families if they disclosed the abuse.
So what is her name?
Bella.
Bella, huh? Make her look at the camera, please.
Bella, mira la cámara.
Does she have a special name?
Yes, yes.
What is it?
Di tu nombre especial.
Bunny. Bella Bunny.
Bella Bunny. Wow, that's wonderful. Would you have her kiss the bunny, please?
Dale un besito al conejo.
But slowly, slow.
Más despacito.
Slow. Oh man, that's nice. Bella Bunny smiling for me, man, it's beautiful.
Have you had the opportunity to interview any pedophiles after you busted them?
Oh yeah, dozens.
Have you ever asked them what would deter them? Was there anything that would have deterred you or changed your mind or prevented you from trafficking or raping a child?
Yeah.
What is it?
Death. Death. And Trump's actually talking about it.
It has to be done.
Yeah.
That was our call.
It's got to be the ultimate punishment. Because they're always weighing, like, if I get caught, I can handle. No. It's death.
Public. I want a public execution. You think that's too much to ask for?
No. These are children.
Now this gives me a perfect opportunity to tee you up for my call to action, America. Are you the type of person who wants to end this? Well, the only way you end this is with your voice. So go over to my website and check out this call to action. We are calling for the death penalty to be reinstated in all 50 states. We need 10 million signatures on this. So it's only gonna take 2 seconds out of your time. The link's right down in the comments. Let's get these signatures. I'm not collecting any garbage or any BS or any additional information. I need your name, I need your email, and I need the state you're from. That is it, period. Your phone number is optional. No clickbait, no bullshit. Let's end this pedophile epidemic in America and start eliminating these demonic scumbags from the face of the earth.
And so we need to start getting loud and graphic like you are doing. Like you've inspired me to be more graphic, because I've always been hesitant. Like, I don't know how much people can take, because I can hardly take it.
I know.
But we're at a point of crisis for these children that we have to be loud and graphic, tell the truth, show the videos, and wake people up. Because it's righteous indignation that's going to change this thing. I mean, again, how did we make slavery finally illegal? It was education. It was Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was the abolitionists who came forward. Frederick Douglass told their stories, got graphic. Here's what's happening. But we haven't done that yet. I think you're leading the effort and actually doing it.
Oh my gosh.
We have to invoke God in this like our founders did. Because if you ask Washington even immortality or Lincoln immortality, what really happened? They would tell you, and they did tell us. Our historians cover it up, but they did tell us. In the end, it was God. In the end, I made a covenant with God to liberate the captive every single time. But go look at what Eisenhower started saying during World War II. And look what Trump's going through it right now. You're watching Trump transform into a spiritual being who is now relying on God.
I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God.
And I mean, this is a guy who, got a pretty big ego. He's been very successful. And you're watching him be humbled and turn to God.
We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution. And we will not forget our God.
We can't win this without that peace. Not at all. No way. The demonic forces are too powerful.
They traffic in women and children, and they do it at levels that, by the way, 4 years ago, it's always bad. If you do one person, it's bad. But this is 15 or 16 times the number. Nobody checks, nobody does anything.
So let me get this straight. Over the past 4 years, 452,121 migrant children have been trafficked into the United States. The US government has taken custody of every single one of those. Of those, 17,500 are currently housed by NGOs, which are now being dragged into court by the DOJ because their staff members have been raping these vulnerable children right under their noses. And here's the kicker, 340,000 of those kids were handed over to random, unvetted illegal immigrants who most likely forged documents just to get their hands on these children. It's a disgraceful criminal mess, and it's all being orchestrated by the United States government. Here's where we dive into the murky waters of this public-private partnership that Alejandro Mayorkas and DHS have established with these Mexican cartels, and the cozy deals HHS has struck with these NGOs. I laid this all out in excruciating detail in my first documentary, Operation Amber Alert. If you have not seen this already, I suggest you pause this documentary and go watch that first. You can catch that documentary on my personal website at www.ryanmatta.pro, or check it out in the highlights on my X account at Ryan Matta Media, or on my Rumble channel at Ryan Matta. Now I've got a question for you, America. Have you ever seen Mexican cartels just delivering kilos of cocaine and, I don't know, tossing them over a border wall or just handing them directly to Border Patrol agents? No? What about AK-47s? No? Why not? Because they would never deliver their merchandise to a Border Patrol agent who's going to steal it, because that merchandise is never going to make it to its final destination. So let me ask you this, America. Why the hell are these cartels trafficking children through Mexico only to hand their merchandise over to a Border Patrol agent? Don't take my word for it. If you go onto YouTube right now and you search cartel drops child over border wall, you will find hundreds of results. And this is all thanks to this system that is engineered by Alejandro Mayorkas, Xavier Becerra, and a list of NGO cronies that Todd Bensman talks about right here.
Under the new FBI director and the AG, they need to have a full-throated investigation about who did what. Now, a lot of folks are thinking, oh, Mayorkas and the top guys. I'm not thinking that way at all. It needs to focus in on the political appointee class. I wrote in my book, Overrun Chapter 4 at length, that this thing was orchestrated and engineered at the political appointee level inside the Domestic Policy Council, the DOJ, all the DHS agencies. The people that they brought in, for example, Tyler Moran, Esther Olivaria, Lucas Gutentag, Amy Pope, that level of people that were in there orchestrating this came in from the NGO world, the non-governmental organization world, and they systematically undermined federal law and statute that required them to faithfully execute those laws, not to dismantle them. But what I'm wondering, Steve, is whether they also steered contracts to their former employers and future employers, because we saw hundreds of millions of dollars.
There is money to be had in contracts to take care of them, to transport them, for security, for hospital watches, for clothing them, feeding them, everything else. So, a lot of people I even know that I worked with that were in management in Border Patrol, in CBP, in DHS, in HSI, and ICE, and all these places, retired to get these contracts, right, through Alejandro Mayorkas, DHS, and they used quite a few Border Patrol related organizations to do that, to get the introductions, the pay for play and everything else like that, so that they can get these contracts. Not only that, but
well, let me point you there. You're saying that employees that used to work inside DHS have now retired so that they could go start an NGO, and those NGOs can start getting these government contracts because they know how to bid, know what to do, know what to say, because they came right from the inside?
Yes.
You're the second person that's told us that.
But and they may not necessarily start the NGO, although a few have. They become consultants of those NGOs, which that gives them a tidy little sum.
Or they sit on the board.
Huh?
Or they get on the board.
Or they get on the board, or they start these businesses themselves of transport. Mike, I have a buddy in Texas that was getting paid, I think, almost $85 an hour. $85 an hour that the government was paying the business owner that had the contract to pay these employees. In many other places throughout all these processing centers, people are getting paid sometimes up to $200 an hour.
We are waiting for records that show where the millions being spent on migrants is going.
Some records we did receive show employees working at migrant shelters have made more than $135 an hour.
These invoices obtained by NBC5 Investigates show employees of a private company, Favorite Staffing, which run the city's migrant shelters, have made at least $135 an hour, in some cases more. In one invoice, a facility manager made $14,000 in a week in December. Another invoice shows a nurse earned more than $20,000 in 1 week.
To see invoices like that are disgusting. They're outrageous, and they should be cause for an immediate investigation.
Each one of these huge processing centers across the country run from $70 to $100 million. Okay, not a year, a month, okay, in services.
And do we know who's got those contracts for those, and are those companies or organizations funneling that money back into political campaigns, or how is that money, how did that contract go to that person that's the luckiest person in the world that's getting this millions of dollars?
It's not by accident, okay? It's connections, it's being able to have access to the DHS secretary, to have access to the higher ups in DHS and CBP, and that's done through either foundations, organizations that are Border Patrol related or CBP DHS related, or functions and things like that that people organize to get people together, to get people an audience with Alejandro Mayorkas. It's the chain of introductions that get you to the right people at the right place if you're willing to pay.
Venezuela, mamá. Venezuela. ¿Sí? ¿Qué tantos años tienes? ¿2 años? ¿No vienes con tu mamá y tu papá? ¿No? ¿Venezuela? ¿Para dónde vas, mamá? ¿Dónde están? ¿Estados Unidos? Okay.
It is a sight just too familiar to Border Patrol agents and Texas State troopers. A few days ago, troopers encountered this 11-year-old boy from Mexico in Eagle Pass. Tens of thousands of kids just like this. They get transferred to the Department of Health and Human Services, then they get released into the U.S., only for many of them to get lost in the system.
This hellish system that they've concocted turns children into human commodities, branding them like livestock for the cartels. They scribble the buyer's details, name, address, phone number on a slip of paper and stick it into the kid's shirt, scribble it on their skin with a permanent marker, or hang it around their neck like a grotesque name tag, right before they hurl these kids over an 18-foot border wall. They do this at strategic points of the border wall where President Trump has had cameras, night vision, and ground sensors installed. The instant the cartels abandon their human cargo, Border Patrol agents swarm the area like vultures. This is where we normally hear the "I'm just following orders" bullshit. These agents are complicit, knowing exactly what nightmare they're perpetrating. They scoop up the child, they shuttle him to a port of entry, and then they input the buyer's information into the child's file, labeling it as the child's sponsor in their system. After that, these children are passed along to HHS for what they call an intake screening, which is just the next step in this horrific pipeline. HHS cracks open the child's file and rings up the so-called sponsor. The conversation goes down like this. "Hey John, Deborah from HHS calling to see if you're expecting a child." John confirms, "Yeah." She probes, "What's the child's name and birthday?" John replies, "Stephanie, 10/4/13. If the details match, John gets an FRA application, and he can then submit his paperwork, so that all the cartel needs to do now is give someone the kid's name and birth date, and they can have a child delivered to them in as little as 14 days.
You call them and you ask, are you expecting a child that's in a shelter? You don't identify where you're calling from or anything. And they'll give you 3, 4 names. They'll say, wait just a minute, let me find that birth date. Huge red flags. If they don't know the information right off the top of their head, I'm red flagging them. But the case managers were taught, no, that's okay, just as long as they can verify the birth date, then you can give them all the information. So another thing,
Wait, so you guys were calling this person and they were answering and you're saying, hey, are you expecting a child?
Right.
They have to give you the date of birth of that
the
child?
The name and date of birth of the child.
The name and date of birth. And it didn't matter if he gave you 15 names and 15 birth dates, as long as one of them was correct. You were saying, okay, we have this child at this facility?
Case managers were, I was not. I was much more...
strict?
Yes, yes.
But case managers, this is how the policies were kind of
correct.
put into place,
this is
and
how
they encouraged that.
Yes, oh yes, definitely. They encourage that.
But don't worry, America, because when they complete the FRA application, they got to cough up some documentation for review, like one ID.
They would just send in their documents. So a large part of it actually...
Wait, on WhatsApp?
On WhatsApp, yes.
So they're sending you their ID.
Photos of their IDs.
You see this ID I'm flaunting right here? This ID, I bought off a Venezuelan immigrant in the streets of New York City. I'm Matta.
Oh, what's up, bro? They're coming to you, huh?
Yep. I went undercover, and in less than 15 minutes on Queens Boulevard in Brooklyn, I got approached. I ordered an ID, let the guy take my photo, came back 45 minutes later, and voila, I'm John Smith.
My name? Any name you want?
Have you any name, huh? What's a normal, like a John Smith?
And,
oh, do you want an address?
Yeah, what address what you want?
Or do you want
me to make up address?
Yeah, just make up a fucking address. As long as you know one that's legit.
What is date of birth?
Do 10/1.
Okay, what's the date?
10 October. October due 1st.
October 1st?
Yep.
What year?
Due 86. What's that?
Eye color?
Oh, brown.
Your weight?
Due 175.
When I'm getting these copies of these IDs, I was like, this is fake. We can't use this, it's fake. And we were told, you're not here to investigate the sponsor, you're here to reunify the child to the sponsor. Well, yes, but this ID is fake. Well, how do you know? You're not an expert. But I know that it's a fake ID. Look at it, even the picture was dark because there was no proper lighting. It was fake. And so we would go on Google, how does a Pennsylvania ID for 2024 or 2021 would look like? And we would get pictures on Google to see what those IDs would look like, because we had no idea. Again,
I forgot about that. You saw way more of that because you were on backgrounds.
I'm not an expert. I don't have knowledge of it. I thought they were going to show me the system or some sort of system, how to figure out if this was okay, maybe inputting it, kind of like the DMV. You input that information and just makes sure that that is the person who they are. There's nothing like that.
So you're using Google to verify documents to determine the fate of a child.
And I remember one in particular because I did reach out to David and I said, hey, this ID is fake. And he's like, well, you're not a professional, but look, it's fake. He goes, and I won't forget, and I'm quoting him, call him back and see if he can get you another one. And so my question to him was, well, doesn't it say on the handbook that if they give us any false documentations that they are denied sponsorship? Well, you're not here to investigate the sponsor. You are here to reunify the child to the sponsor. Just call and ask and see if he has another form of identification. And I remember calling, and I remember it was in Pennsylvania, and I called the sponsor, and he says, what's wrong with that one? I just paid $200 for it.
So a guy tells
That's
you
what's wrong with it.
Exactly.
So the guy tells you, I just bought this ID, this fake ID. Why aren't you accepting it?
Right. What's wrong with it? I just paid $200 with it.
And then you tell this to your boss and your supervisors, and what do?
They take the case.
And they check that box?
Yes.
And approve that sponsor, and off?
Yes.
Off goes Johnny with
the sponsor.
That doesn't sound like rigorous vetting to me.
If you don't do the vetting right, you don't know if they're engaged in criminal activity. That's how you end up with an MS-13 gang member as the sponsor. That's how you end up with pedophiles getting 20 children in the same home. That's how you end up there, because the vetting's been crappy.
Mr. Secretary, is this remotely consistent with the claims by your department that you're doing everything in your power to ensure child security?
All potential sponsors, anyone who wishes to apply to sponsor a child, must undergo extensive vetting process.
Now, let me give you the rundown on this so-called vetting process. You would think with the FBI database and top-tier technology we got here, agencies would be exploiting it to ensure these children aren't handed over to drug dealers, child traffickers, or pedophiles. But that's not happening. These background checks are outsourced to some obscure third party nobody's ever heard of. When the results come back, the caseworkers don't even lay eyes on them. Only the higher-ups get a peek. This means that not a single caseworker managing these cases knows if the sponsor passed or failed their background check.
Many times, a case manager would arrive at work on Monday morning only to find out that one of their children had been ripped away and shipped out before they could conclude their findings.
Who's ultimately giving you're just the caseworker, you're approving it, but somebody else has to review this and sign off on it.
We have a third party who is weighing in with the totality of the information that has been provided.
And they would review the case and either agree or not agree with your recommendation as case manager.
And then an ORR professional staff member approves, denies, or sends it back for additional information.
And who is GDIT? Where did this company come from?
They just have the contract for the third-party review.
How many companies out there do third-party reviews?
As far as I know, it's just the one.
So we got one company that's magically probably getting a quite hefty sum.
I'm sure.
In the contract. How long did it take from the time that you submitted the documents to GDIT to it come back?
Usually less than 24 hours.
So in less than 24 hours, they're taking this massive file of all this children's and child's information, but they're taking however many a day are coming in, and they're supposed to review that, and then they sign off. So 3 different points of failure or areas where that address could have been caught, but the system's so basically fucked that not one person was able to catch that child was being delivered to a strip club.
Congressman ORR is not a law enforcement.
I didn't say you were a law enforcement. I didn't ask you to enforce the law. Do you ever refer? Like if you found somebody doing a criminal act in your vetting process to one of these children, you're not a law enforcement agency. Would you refer charges in that case?
Our job.
Is that 0?
And that's not even the worst part of it. 95% of these kids are being handed over to illegal immigrants. These background checks they're only conducted within the United States, meaning somebody could be a serial child rapist over in Mexico, bribe their way out of jail, cross into the US, and apply to receive a child.
Every sponsor goes through a thorough vetting.
The sponsors that they're going to, if they have criminal history, you're typically going to find that in the country of origin. You're not going to find that no matter what kind of background check you do here in the United States.
Congressman, we verify things with consulate.
Okay,
So like when I called the consulate to verify some documents, and so the Adriana Lynch comes over to me and she says, "You're never to call the consulate again. I heard that you called the consulate. That is my job. You are never to call them again." So I got in trouble. She was the person who was verifying, like if we thought we had a fake document, like we were to send it to her, and then she would send it to the consulate and come back and tell us that like it wasn't fake or it was fake. Like we knew we were supposed to send it to her, right? But I didn't think she was really checking them. So I went ahead and checked this one on my own, but she found out about it. So they went back and told her that like someone else had contacted, the consulate told her that I had contacted them. And so, yeah, so they've probably got some inner workings, you know.
We never saw sponsors face-to-face, and fake documents were rampant. Contacting the Guatemalan consulate in regards to fake documents resulted in a reprimand by the HHS ORR official stating, "That's not your job, and you are never to contact the consulate again."
We're taking documents from other countries, and actually at Pomona we took RENAP birth certificates, which I don't know if you know what RENAP is. It's basically an online clearinghouse for birth certificates where anybody, it's mostly Guatemala, but anyone can go on there and print any birth certificate they want. By ORR policy, RENAP birth certificates are not acceptable because they are so easily obtained. But at Pomona, we were given special permission to accept those RENAP birth certificates.
So there's a website I can go online and basically buy and get any type of birth certificate I want from any country.
Well,
and then you guys were knowing that these sites are out there accepting those forms of.
Yeah, it said RENAP right at the top. And of course, these were mostly the UCs. Well, not really. It was the UCs and the sponsors, but the vast majority of UCs were coming across with these RENAP birth certificates,
okay, so
which could literally be handed out as they cross the border.
So now we have children that are coming over with fake documents.
Absolutely.
So this child is not who they're claiming he is, which means he turns into a ghost because they're going to be looking for a child that doesn't exist. And then you're turning that child over to an adult with the same type of documents. So you have a ghost child going to a ghost adult?
In a lot of cases.
Furthermore, this administration's decision to eliminate DNA testing to verify familial relationships has created dangerous loopholes which traffickers are now currently aware of and actively exploiting.
Criminal sponsors are defrauding the U.S. government by using this government program as a logistical chain in their trafficking operation.
And that's exactly how criminals on the terrorist watch list have been able to sponsor these migrant children.
How many children have been placed with known MS-13 gang members? We know of one.
Was that a question to me?
Yes.
And please repeat the question. I thought you were making a comment.
When I reported the MS-13 case and provided evidence that other MS-13 and 18th Street gang members were sponsoring children, ORR retaliated against me.
What do you know?
Congressman, obviously, when we go through the extensive vetting process, we would make sure that what we try to do is place them with someone who will keep them safe. Obviously, someone who is involved in gang activity would not be someone we would consider.
And yet you did so anyway after you were warned by the case manager.
We had a whistleblower come forward with a list of 8,000 addresses. Within the first couple hundred addresses they checked, they found 4 sponsors who received a child, and that man gave them the address to a strip club.
So in the Florida grand jury case where the one child was delivered to the strip club, did y'all vet that location? I mean, was that considered a house? I mean, is a strip club now considered a house for children being trafficked or lost?
As I mentioned, Congressman, we can discuss the Florida report. There are many issues that we have with that report.
I'm not reading from stuff that I made up. We got ORR sent over 100 unaccompanied children to a single family house in Texas. If this vetting process is working, how does that happen? Whistleblowers from ORR knowingly transferred UAC to criminal and sex traffickers. If this process is working, how is that happening?
I had multiple cases that I reported on. One in particular where we sent 329 children to an address in Houston, Texas, right? Two buildings, 2 garden apartment buildings.
That's a really generous foster family, isn't it?
Very kind of them.
Take on 329 kids?
Yeah.
At the time that I reported 329 to these two buildings right here. 329 children. But we know that when some investigative journalists that went and knocked on these doors, the children were no longer there. We know they're not there. These are just front addresses.
America, brace yourself for the disturbing truth. The Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, conducted a vetting process so flawed that they've approved the transfer of innocent children to an adult male who openly provided the address of a strip club as his residence.
So you became aware that you got 329 children that are sent to the same address. Who else knew about that?
The entire executive leadership at Health and Human Services knew about it, as well as the Office of Inspector General and the HSI.
But they continued to send children because we know the numbers went up even after I had reported this to the leadership. I remember this particular one, I had stayed up all night putting this PowerPoint together to make sure that, I had put together all of the evidence, that it was in one package, and that leadership could then, make a decision based on all of the data that was put together in the one PowerPoint.
So were additional children being sent there even after it was identified that we had 100 children there, 200 children there, 300 children there?
Yes, Senator, I think that before I left the site that number may have been up to 500 plus.
So no real evaluation from there other than just keep sending them because that gets them out of here.
Yeah, no, the PowerPoint that I put together to demonstrate what was happening, they said was speculative. And I think they told Tara that she had cultural bias, something like that, but they did not take it seriously.
Consider this. We have at our disposal the formidable resources of the FBI, DOJ, CIA, and NSA equipped with advanced technology for surveillance and investigation. Yet we have HHS caseworkers who are relying on Google Earth for vetting these so-called sponsors.
We verified addresses by looking on Google Earth and making it like from above and making sure there was a house there.
You guys were using Google Earth to do background checks on the homes?
To verify that there was a house there, yes.
So you guys were doing proof of
They had to provide further proof of address, but then you were supposed to take their proof of address that they provided and then verify on Google Earth that there actually was a structure there.
And how were they submitting this proof of residency?
Oh, it was just, it was over WhatsApp. They would submit all these documents, so.
Wait, these are people that are sponsoring children and they're sending you proof of residency via a text message on WhatsApp?
Correct, yes.
And you guys are, as government employees, this is part of policy? This is how you guys are being instructed to receive this type of information?
Yes.
And then you guys are taking that information, you guys are using Google Earth to verify?
Correct.
And this is how we're determining if an adult is going to receive an unaccompanied alien child that's going to be delivered now to I don't know if you call that vetting, a vetted sponsor.
They call it a vetted sponsor.
They call it a vetted sponsor who's going to receive a child that has not been DNA tested.
Correct.
That's the definition of human trafficking.
And to a large extent,
and you're delivering these children across state lines, correct?
Across state lines, yes.
And then you place them in foster homes. You release them into our communities.
Mr. Chairman, we work closely with the Department of Homeland Security, which does the vetting for these children when they first enter into the country.
You're placing them. You're the ones that are placing them in people's homes, and you're the one who's telling me, don't worry about it. They're all carefully vetted. They're all secure. Don't worry that we can't reach them by phone after we've placed them in these homes. It might be they just weren't paying attention to the phone.
This is not just a lapse in judgment. This is intentional, and the system is operating exactly as designed. Maximum plausible deniability.
It is the Department of Homeland Security that does the initial. The Department of Homeland Security is the agency that then goes through that process. When we receive the children, Department of Homeland Security shares with us the information they have compiled on
the words that keep haunting me are those that Cromwell spoke to the Long Parliament. You have sat here too long for any good you have been doing. It is not fit that you should sit here any longer. You shall now give way to better men. Now depart and go, I say, in the name of God, go.
Now let's reflect on the horrors that unfolded at Southwest Key Programs. The charges against these employees were not just allegations, but revelations of rape and sexual abuse occurring under HHS's supervision. Now let me remind you, America, that is what happened to these children under HHS's supervision. So imagine what's happening to these children right now after they've been delivered to a buyer in America where nobody's coming to look for these children. These children, already victims, were subject to further trauma while awaiting clearance for a placement with their so-called sponsor. Now, after enduring such unthinkable abuse, they were then released right back into the hands of child predators, all thanks to the United States government.
Is that true?
Well, we
Do you
certainly, Margaret, we certainly have received reports of children being trafficked, even those as to whom we know where they are. That is outside the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security.
Mhm.
What we do is we turn children over within 72 hours, as the law requires, to the Department of Health and Human Services, and then HHS places those children.
Now let's talk about a statistic that still haunts me and gives me nightmares to this day. Once these children are trafficked across the border and sold into exploitation in America, their life expectancy drops from 72 years to a mere 24 months. Their delicate bodies cannot withstand the relentless cycle of abuse and torture that they are subject to. We are not merely highlighting a systemic breakdown. We are exposing a child trafficking network sanctioned by our own government agencies. It is imperative that we rise, not just in outrage, but in action, to protect these children, to ensure their safety, and to dismantle the corrupt system once and for all. Now let's perform some basic arithmetic to grasp the full scale of this tragedy. Over the past 4 years, 340,000 migrant children have gone missing and have been taken into custody. These children were subjected to rape and sexual abuse while under the supposed protection. And then they were handed over to adult men, many of whom are undocumented immigrants using fraudulent documents. Now the government has lost contact with both the child and the so-called sponsor. Over this 4-year span, which amounts to 1,460 days, if we divide the 340,000 missing children by the 1,460 days, we find that approximately 232 migrant children are being delivered to a buyer in the U.S. every single day that this operation continues. This practice has been ongoing for 4 years. Now, consequently, the first 20,000 children lost by March 1st, 2021 have most likely met a grim fate, referred to here as having surpassed their expiration date. This stark reality is why you might hear President Trump making statements like this.
Many of them are dead. I think many of them are dead. Most of them possibly are dead. It's so sad.
Many of them have been lost into sex trafficking.
Many of them are dead. Many of them are dead. They have done such a bad job. They have done such a bad job.
It's heartbreaking.
No, it's heartbreaking. It's amazing.
Will you commit to that? Will you commit to finding
I
those
would
children
do that, sure.
in their beds?
I haven't been asked that question, but the answer is yes. It's a simple answer.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump.
Today, Trump comes back. He just wins the election, comes right to you, and he says, I want to end, once and for all, this child trafficking. Where do you start? And then walk me through everything that you do.
So it's a funny question because that actually happened. In 2016, that happened to me. He did come to me. And not in 2016, it was actually 2020. I remember it was October, a month before the election in 2020. I was in the White House, in the Roosevelt Room, and I was talking to Kash Patel was in there, the National Security Advisor, Rob O'Brien, and they came to me and asked that question. They said, what else do we need to be doing? And I said, I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. You need to build task forces that you've never built before. You need to dream up something that's never been actually realized. And I said, you need to create a task force, private-public partnerships. That's the key to this. You know, I've been in both private and public. You need both. Private organization, NGOs can do things that law enforcement can't do, or they can't do it fast enough. And you know, there's a million things they can do that we can't do. But the idea was create a position like that. So you're not going and pleading at the steps of the embassy, will you please do this? Because it'll work. No, you go in the name of the president and say, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take these resources, you're gonna partner with this vetted organization, they're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. We will set traps all over the world and we'll catch the pedophiles. Okay, and if you wanna focus on the American pedophiles, like to me it's borderless and I don't care. A kid is a kid. But yeah, if you need to stay within your constitutional mandate, fine, just focus on the Americans and you watch how many we can catch. Because I've presided over the rescue of over 6,000 women and children. Like I know every trap, I know every secret. You know, I'm sure there's more I'm trying to learn, right? But I know how to infiltrate And I need to train teams, private, public, together, and build these task forces. Believe me, we've experimented with everything. We know what works, we know what doesn't work. So I'm explaining this in October of 2020, and it was Kash Patel who reached over. He, at the time, he's working for the National Security Council, and he said, let's do it. Do you want the position? I said, yeah, I'll take the position. I said, all right, we'll start getting it together. I was so excited, dude. I was mapping it out. Here's where I'll go first, here's what I'll do. And then Trump lost. And now, for the last 4 years, you've pretty much hardly even heard the word child trafficking come out of anyone's mouth. So we had the plan in place, at least at least the beginning of it. And they were about to implement this program. And I hope they do, whether it's me or someone else. But I hope they implement this program, because you get enough. There's enough experts now. There wasn't in the early 2000s when I started. There's enough experts you can take from like HSI and foreign nationals. There's enough now that you could build a task. I'm talking a huge task force. I'm talking hundreds of thousands worldwide. The U.S. leads it, and we should lead it. You know why? Because we are the number one demand. We need to take responsibility for the fact that we consume more child sex material than anyone in the world. So it's our duty, more than any other nation, to get out there and lead this and liberate the captive like we always have done, but this time it's children. I mean, not that children haven't been liberated and captive before, but we've never seen this before. Like again, I'm a very spiritual person, right? And I see demonic forces. For the first time in maybe the history of the world, their focus is children. Hurt children, hurt children. Call it good, package it in this nice thing that sounds like tolerance and whatever, minor attracted persons, all that crap. But never in the history of the world have I seen like satanic forces zeroing in on just children. And so it's our responsibility as Americans to live what we've learned, to stay true to the legacy that we've created to liberate the captive. And it's time to do that. And it's time to look at the children, the millions of children who are sex slaves and slave labor and organ harvesting victims around the world, and begin to liberate them.
Now that you're able to grasp the enormity of what's at stake, let me share with you a story of a true angel among politicians. The only one who's ever shown a genuine concern by reaching out to me. Maria Thurs, the Attorney General of Guatemala. I've been on a divine mission to rescue these children, and not a single politician or law enforcement agency in America has even whispered a word of support or offered help. But here's where it gets beautiful. I translated my documentary into Spanish, and within 24 hours, Maria's office was on the line, inviting me to Guatemala to collaborate with her team on the crisis of these missing children. To all of the citizens of Guatemala who have been misled into thinking that Attorney General Maria Thurs is corrupt or some kind of villain, I am here to set the record straight. You have been fed a pack of lies.
Consuelo Porras galardonada como la corrupta del año.
Attorney General Maria Consuelo Porras, who has been designated a corrupt actor by the US State Department since 2021.
This is a person who actually was part of an intent of a coup d'etat against Arevalo, what you just mentioned. They tried to annul the election results.
Just like the American public was deceived about Trump.
Trump is a con.
President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump.
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 Trump. Trump. Trump. Trump. Trump. Trump.
Trump. The Trump campaign. Trump campaign. The Trump campaign. The Trump campaign. Trump campaign. It's the Trump campaign. Donald Trump. Trump Russia. Trump campaign. The Trump campaign. The Trump campaign. Trump campaign.
Let me enlighten you. First off, every brave soul who's ever tried to expose this monstrous child trafficking operation, funneling kids to the depraved elite circle of pedophiles, has ended up dead. Just speaking about this puts a target on my back. Making these documentaries, that's practically signing my own death warrant. I have zero reason to lie to you. If I'm still alive to release this film, it's because God himself has chosen me to lead this holy war and rescue his children. Now let me tell you a little bit more about Maria Thurs. She's not just any politician. She's a warrior for justice. She's a beacon of integrity in a world of corruption. While the rest of the world has turned a blind eye, she's opened her doors. She's fighting against an international web of deceit and crime, risking her life every day to protect the innocent. She is the kind of leader who doesn't wait for change. She is the change. So to those who doubt her, I say, wake the fuck up.
Consuelo Porras
Dr. Consuelos-Porras, over 30 years of service, over 40 years of service to her country, who has never once in the history of any post that she's ever had been accused of unethical behavior. Not once, not one time. And until actually doing the work that she was asked to do, now all of a sudden they say at the State Department that she's corrupt. A 70-year-old woman who reminds me of the Trump of Guatemala. All of a sudden now she's bad. This is how bad they are. The State Department comes in and says, I don't need to prove that there was any corruption. I can merely say corruption. And I can deny you, your family. I can do anything I can to hurt you in the United States. That is the power that is yielded by this guy named Blinken. If you don't do our bidding.
Do you think the United States should be manipulating members of a foreign Congress in this manner?
Not a question of manipulating members of foreign Congress. It's the fact that in the recent election in Guatemala, there was a very strong attempt made to prevent the democratically elected president of Guatemala from taking office. There was an attempt to disrupt the inauguration of that president. And if we stand for democracy anywhere, we have to stand for it everywhere, including in Guatemala.
Our way of seeing it, Ryan, is not to defend democracy, because what we had last year wasn't democracy. Democracy is what the majority of people decide. And here we didn't have a decision.
Porque el señor alcalde ya estamos cansados que él trae gente de otro lado. Paga 1,000 por voto. No, señores, ya no queremos corrupción. Ya estamos cansados.
En momentos ha habido mucho problema. Se evidencia corrupción, manipulación de las papeletas, incluso hasta balazos han habido. Y entonces no estamos conformes con eso.
Can you walk me through the process of how your elections are rigged and why you're saying they are rigged?
People were scanning these documents. They were downloading it from the system on the date of the election. They were downloading them, and I saw in the one on my table where I voted, I saw that it was missing a signature from one of the people on the table. And I said, that's a legal, that hasn't complied legally, you know?
Yeah, because you don't know who that person was that just turned in that ballot. If it was
and you need to have 3 signatures in each ballot for the president, the secretary, and the vocal. And mine was missing the vocal.
Your personal ballot?
My ballot from my table. From the tally
with your name on
the table. No, from the tally of my table.
Oh, so at the end of the day, there needs to be 3 people that sign off on that.
Yeah.
And only 2 did.
And only 2 did. Yeah.
That can't happen.
That's insane. That's insane.
Was there at any point on election day or the day before election day an announcement that the voting software, there was any bugs or anything, they had to do an update or a software update when it crashed? You said it was off. Was there anything like that happened?
They supposedly reset it a couple of days before the election.
So
supposedly.
This happened in America.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
From the beginning, the entire process was marred with a lot of problems. From corruption inside the electoral authority that acquired a lot of equipment and softwares for the counting and transmission of the votes, and then to the sequestration of all the final vote counting records that they didn't want to show to the people what had been tallied at the end.
Yes, this reads a little bit like a telenovela, because what has happened also is that the TSC, or the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, their top officials, they just left the country. They just abandoned their posts so that they wouldn't have to investigate or bring enforcement, right?
Because a lot of these have been, 1, paid off, a lot of the magistrates, and 2, threatened by members of the U.S. State Department through the embassy. And all the payments were made by USAID. We estimate above $10 million, which for the U.S. budget is petty change.
Sure.
But for Guatemala's empty pockets, it's a huge bribe. So you can bribe yourself into almost anywhere with a fraction of those $10 million.
So a lot of people know that something happened. The real votes were never counted. And at the end, it was the will of the State Department, aided by the UN and the European Union, that forced precedent upon the Guatemalan people.
So you're saying that the U.S. government, the Biden administration, helped cover up voter fraud?
Yes, they definitely covered up for the president that supposedly won, and they actively tried to block the investigation on the fraudulent electoral process.
These are all legitimate investigations that, when you look at the evidence, is the same as the evidence you have in Maricopa County, the same as you have in Georgia, same as you have in Texas and Colorado and everywhere else, being swept up under the rug by politicians and DAs who are bought and paid for by a guy named George Soros. Well, the same thing happens in Guatemala.
What was it like here in Guatemala the day after? Did your citizens think the election was rigged, or did they actually believe that this guy was legit?
The people, we call them polytalkers here. The people that go to Twitter and defend democracy, which is, they were not defending democracy. They were imposing and misinforming people.
Did your citizens realize that those aren't real people? Those are hired actors that are being paid by our State Department and our CIA.
We know that, yeah.
And they're clowns.
Yeah, of course. And you see them, because you see some of them in the streets, they are like bad dressing people. They don't know how to speak. They don't know how to defend a legal point. They only say, we are going here defending democracy. We're here defending democracy, and they are not defending anything. They're just defending their check at the end of the day, because that's what they're doing, and that's only the thing they know how to do it.
And then they use the media to film those people and make it look like everybody's like that.
Because local media gets propaganda from the government.
And they came out and said, "Oh, this is just a ploy," and the left-wing media, which is funded by Soros. Funded by Soros. I'm not making this up. This isn't hyperbolic. Everyone in Guatemala knows who George Soros is. That even the car dealers down there, even the businesses down there, are funded by Soros in order to drive the ability for them to just fund back money to the Soros organization so he can wreak havoc on countries around the world. I'm disgusted.
Can you name some of the NGOs that you think are interfering in Guatemalan society?
Well, I'll definitely give you one that has interfered in a lot of issues here in Guatemala and many other countries. Is Soros Foundation and his network of smaller ones. But that's one of the main ones. We also, during the migrant caravans that started in 2018 and 2019, we detected a couple of NGOs, specifically from Chicago, that were actually here aiding and abetting the human traffickers and giving and handing money out to people that were actually transiting in Guatemala illegally and that were heading to the United States, to enter the U.S. illegally as well.
So NGOs based in the United States with the knowledge of the State Department were helping illegal migrants come to the United States from Central America.
Well, not only with the knowledge of the State Department, but several of these NGOs inside the network of these people doing this were also getting money and are still getting money from USAID.
Here's how USAID fits into this sinister puzzle. USAID isn't just an aid organization. There's nothing aid about it. It's the fucking money laundering arm of the CIA, currently under the control of Samantha Powers, one of the most corrupt and vile individuals on this planet, right up there with Susan Rice, Avril Haines, and Victoria Nuland.
That is not the approach that we take either in Guatemala.
Let me give you another one. We spent $30 million for climate and environmental related programs, including funds to teach radical climate agenda in schools. Man, if we gave USAID money under a different administration and they took the NRA to that country and said, we're going to train all these kids in self-defense and gun ownership, what would you have to say about that?
Congressman, just the language that you're using suggests that these are not USAID.
USAID is the linchpin of the deep state, the crucial link that binds the Department of Defense, the State Department, and the CIA in their global manipulation.
USAID is effectively a switch player to assist the Pentagon on the national security front, to assist the State Department on the national interest front, or to assist the intelligence community on a sort of clandestine operations front. So you can look up funny moments, by the way, in USAID being a CIA front.
More recently, the agency's leaned into its humanitarian image as a ploy to topple governments, specifically through its Office of Transition Initiatives, transition being the euphemism for overthrowing governments. OTI describes its work as, quote, supporting U.S. foreign policy objectives by helping local partners advance peace and democracy with, quote, programs that serve as catalysts for positive political change.
Moments of opportunity come with high expectations, to make change fast, to prove that democracies can indeed deliver for their people.
This isn't about spreading democracy or aid. It's about exerting control, toppling regimes, and funneling resources through corrupt channels to continue their operations of power and destruction. Wake up to the reality of how our government operates, how it uses humanitarian aid as a smokescreen for its dark agenda.
What issues did they push on Guatemala?
For instance, under the guise of the fight against corruption and counter-narcotics efforts, they actually started imposing a lot of socialist agenda ideas, gender ideology, and other projects that, are more aligned with the globalist agenda of the UN.
And the government of Guatemala announced that it will request the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, to cease its operations in the Central American nation. The president pointed out that the Biden administration wants to introduce a multicultural agenda to the country, which he cataloged as indigenism. In this context, Matta demanded the exit of USAID for its interference in the internal affairs of the nation.
This documentary should be the fucking wake-up call that forces an immediate investigation into U.S. aid and every NGO they fund, and anyone, even tangibly linked to them. It's time we all get our heads out of our asses and we start to confront the stench of corruption. All it takes is to follow the gosh damn money.
When I find out we spent nearly $1 million to train and support the LGBTQ+ Victory Institute that trains and supports left-wing candidates in Guatemala, after Guatemala pushed to be the pro-life capital of America, and then invested $11 million in assistance for groups to push for abortion activism in Guatemala. I'm just wondering, Administrator, how that fits into save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen domestic correction, democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Can you help me out there?
Well, I want to say off the bat, I'm not familiar with either of those programs. We have, as you can imagine,
I'm sure you got a lot.
Thousands of programs around the world.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, man.
But I am absolutely happy. I would actually like to hear more about what you're referring to.
I'm going to give you some more.
Okay, no, that too. Okay, but for starters, to simply say that we do stand with marginalized communities, and we do have a situation where you see significant spikes in attacks.
We're not talking about
LGBTQ.
slavery, man. We're not talking about what's happening in East Turkestan. We're talking about different viewpoints. This is a sovereign country which we wish to help, and instead of helping them economically, we're telling them culturally. We're spending our money to change them culturally because we disagree with where they are culturally.
11 congressmen, signed on to a letter that was sent to Blinken and to Samantha Powers that said, how are you interfering with the sovereignty of another nation? This is probably the clearest case of international interference into a country's democracy that you could possibly see. And the resulting effect is that they're hiding the murder. The murder. I'm not talking about, this is not hyperbolic. They are murdering, they are raping, and they are disappearing thousands of children from Guatemala. One of the largest number of children to be trapped across the border, and largest number of migrants comes from the Guatemala area.
Now let's dive into the crux of this investigation, Save the Children. On April 12th of 2024, the Attorney General's office sent a letter to Ken Paxton's office stating, and I quote,
"It is a pleasure to greet you and wish you success in your daily activities. By higher instruction, I am writing you to request, if you consider it appropriate, your immediate attention to a serious situation affecting the Republic of Guatemala. As the public ministry, we have received a complaint as a criminal report about a very important and sensitive issue, our beloved children. As you know, deficiencies in security and diplomacy related to the border between the United States and Mexico have resulted in a significant increase in drug trafficking, but also a devastating emergence of human trafficking. In relation to a new complaint that has been filed with this institution, a horrifying pattern of disappearances of children from Guatemala has been brought to our attention. It has been reported to the public ministry that a complex network involving non-governmental organizations, NGOs, operating within Guatemala, who collaborate with specific entities in the state of Texas, are implicated in the abuse of Guatemalan children when they are away from their parents and do not have someone to protect them. These Guatemalan children have been reportedly placed in shelters and organizations throughout Texas under the guise of providing them with a family environment. Disturbingly, there have been reports and documented situations of sexual abuse in these shelters, which is a huge violation of the rights and dignity of these children. The state of Texas bears much of this responsibility for these lost children, who have been transferred to the border and processed migratorily in Texas, apparently fully aware of this situation.
Let me pause that right there for a second. What the Attorney General is alleging is that children are being abducted from Guatemala, trafficked into the United States, and placed into facilities where they suffer rape and sexual abuse. And let me be crystal clear, the state of Texas knows that this shit is happening, and they're not doing jack shit about it. And your Attorney General, she's gosh damn right, and we've proven it at the start of this documentary. But here's what I didn't tell you, Guatemala. On April 7th of 2021, Texas Governor Greg Abbott called out HHS for running a child migrant intake facility in San Antonio that was a complete disaster. There were allegations of sexual abuse, understaffing, you name it.
Children at this facility are being sexually assaulted. There are not enough staff to safely supervise the children at this facility. Some children in this facility are not eating throughout the day. These problems are a byproduct of President Biden's open border policies. To end this abuse, the Biden administration must immediately shut down this facility.
He ordered the Texas Rangers and the Department of Public Safety to dig into this mess. But let's be real, Abbott didn't have the balls to shut it down himself. He just demanded that the Biden administration did so. And guess what, America? They didn't shut it down. They kept it running.
Has the governor of Texas done anything meaningful to stop that? No? The Republican governor? Well, it's more complicated. Really, tell me how. Speak slowly so I can understand. It's not more complicated than that. It's more dishonest than that. You're lying to me. You don't want to do it because your donors don't want you to do it. It's that simple.
So our government knew that children were being raped in these facilities, and they did nothing to stop it. And guess what? To this day, not one of these scumbags has been held accountable. It's just business as usual for these elite pricks. How does that sit with you, Guatemala? Are you fine with the CIA, the State Department, and USAID and this elite network of elite pedophile scumbags snatching your children off the streets, kidnapping your children, and dragging them into America so they can put them in these child prison camps where they get raped and assaulted by staff while they sit there and torture these children before they sell them off to a pedophile in America? Are you okay with that? Sure hope not. And the letter continues.
Among these non-governmental organizations operating in Guatemala and the state of Texas that may be involved in child trafficking operations include the involvement of, number 1, Save the Children, number 2, Changing the Way We Care, number 3, the World Childhood Foundation, number 4, Arise, number 5, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, and this is concerning. What could be particularly alarming about these organizations is that some of them receive federal funds from American taxpayers. I have been informed that other non-governmental organizations operating in Guatemala and the state of Texas that could be accomplices to child trafficking, possibly supporting this trafficking and other issues with unaccompanied children and adolescents traveling, but they have been proven to be unsuccessful in protecting children in Guatemala. The public ministry, obligated to protect the human rights and interests of the inhabitants of the Republic of Guatemala, will spare no effort and exhaust all necessary efforts to locate and criminally prosecute those responsible for this enormous tragedy. Be assured that the Attorney General and Chief of the Public Ministry of the Republic of Guatemala will zealously execute her legal mandate to eradicate this epidemic of child trafficking and to hold those who commit these crimes against humanity accountable. I respectfully request that you contact us as soon as possible to agree on a joint effort aimed at resolving this humanitarian crisis for which your country is directly responsible in part. Without further ado, I subscribe with the highest expression of my consideration and esteem. Truly, regards.
So let me get this straight. The AG of Guatemala reaches out to the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, who's supposed to be the good guy on our side, And to this day, he hasn't even had the decency to respond to the Attorney General of Guatemala. When this letter was sent, there were 85,000 lost children. Today, that number has ballooned to 340,000, and there's an additional 232 children that disappear every damn day. What the hell is going on? I've put out 3 documentaries, and not one of these assholes has reached out to me. Not a gosh damn one of them. So you can understand my frustration and my outrage. Here's what should have fucking happened. And every conservative country allied with the US to launch a massive coordinated raid on all of the Save the Children facilities all across the world. Just imagine the countless children who have been raped and assaulted in these facilities because Ken Paxton chose to play fucking politics with their lives. Now picture how much evidence has been shredded or deleted because these places know that they're about to get raided the minute Trump takes office. Ken Paxton, at this point, why didn't you just hand them Hillary Clinton's bleach bit? What a gosh damn shame.
Children are scrubbing dishes, they are operating heavy machinery, they are delivering meals, they are harvesting coffee, they are working construction, they are working as housekeepers, they are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid, they are not going to school, they are not cared for, they are not giving meals.
And the person who is responsible for him here threatens him, like saying, "You mean nothing to me, be careful."
What we found is that kids are getting terribly injured. Their legs are getting ripped off in chicken processing plants. They're shattering their backs, falling from roofs. And we found at least 12 cases recently in which these kids have been killed.
And it just doesn't stop. They don't care if the kids die. They say, well, there's more kids coming in the following month. And it's all unaccompanied migrant girls who are working to pay off their debt to the cartel.
These illegal alien girls that have been trafficked across the border that are pimping themselves out.
You can go in there and buy one of these underage children that are working to pay everything off.
My detectives have to see the video clips of the children screaming in pain and fear and agony because of evil monsters that are creating the child porn that these people are swapping and enjoying in their deranged mind.
This one girl, she's only 12, an unaccompanied minor who was 9 months pregnant and about to go into labor. How did we get here? How did we get here?
And they have no name, no number, no identity. They are the perfect victim of any kind of exploitation within this country because no one even knows they exist.
The invisibility of these kids just continues.
The FBI needs to be involved. They need to go find every single one of these kids. FBI needs to find them. We're looking at the biggest child smuggling ring and the biggest child labor ring in American history, and this administration is responsible for it.
Dear Kash Patel, I am writing you as we have just concluded our investigative documentary, Operation Amber Alert Guatemala. Our team has uncovered and documented the trafficking of over 452,121 migrant children into the United States, all of which facilitated by a troubling public-private partnership. Our findings indicate direct involvement from key figures such as Alejandro Mayorkas through his public-private partnership with Mexican cartels and HHS Xavier Becerra via his agency's direct funding with NGOs who have been raided in Guatemala for the trafficking of migrant children into America. Our documentary provides comprehensive evidence that should facilitate the insurance of the arrest warrants, not only for these high-ranking officials, but also for every NGO that has received funding from USAID, HHS, or the U.S. State Department, which were all implicated in the oversight and welfare of these children. We are presenting this documentary to you in hopes that it will catalyze swift and decisive action from your office. The depths and the breadth of this evidence we've gathered should be compelling enough to move forward with legal proceedings. Now, Kash Patel, the only question we have for you is, what are you going to do about it?
We will not forget our country. We will not forget our Constitution. And we will not forget our God.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters of Guatemala and America, lend me your ears, for I bring forth a message of fire and truth. I stand before you, not on my own accord, but as a chosen instrument of the Almighty. God, in his infinite wisdom and his boundless love, has seen it fit to send me on a mission, a divine quest to expose the darkest of evils that fester within every heart within our nation in this child trafficking operation, orchestrated by those who were meant to protect us, the United States government. Let us not falter in the face of this revelation. God has chosen me, and through me, he has chosen each one of you to bear witness to this truth. The Lord does not send his servants into battle unprepared. He has ignited within me and within you a flame of righteous indignation, a passion for justice that will not be quenched until every child is safe, every predator is unmasked, and every shadow of this vile operation is brought into the light. Imagine the audacity, the sheer blasphemy of those who would use their power to exploit the most innocent among us. But know this, God's wrath is mighty, and his justice is swift. He has anointed me to be his voice, to shout from the rooftops, to pierce through the vial of secrecy with the sword of truth. I am here to declare that this ends now, with us, with God's warriors standing united. To those who have committed these unspeakable acts, hear this, your days are numbered. We are coming for you, armed not with the weapons of war, but with the divine mandate of justice. You have hidden behind the flag, behind the laws, and behind the institutions, but you have not hidden from the eyes of God, nor from his chosen. We will expose every lie, every cover-up, and every deceitful act. To the American and Guatemalan people, I say rise. Rise with the understanding that each one of us has been called to join this battle. God has sent me to you to ignite your soul with purpose, to fill your hearts with courage. We are not just fighting for justice, we are fighting for the soul of our nations, for the sanctity of childhood, and for a future where our children can grow up knowing that they are safe. Do not let fear or doubt cloud your resolve. God has given us the strength, the wisdom, and the will to see this through. Let each and every one of you become a beacon of light, a protector of the innocent. Together, we will dismantle this operation piece by piece until there is nothing left but truth, shining so bright for all to see. This is not just my mission, it is our mission. God has sent me, but he has chosen us all. Let us not fail him, let us not fail our children. Let us show the world the power of divine justice. Let this be the moment we reclaim our moral standing, our integrity, and our very humanity. For the sake of our children, for the love of our country, for the glory of God, let us ignite this fire of justice and never let it die. Amen. Let's go to war.
January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day.
We've already not 1 week into this administration, and we're already saving thousands of people.
So they found about 75 to 80,000 of those kids already. What in the world was Biden's administration doing?
Let's put aside.
Well, I can't put aside 340,000 children.
Labels. Let's put aside what happened in the past.
The head of Doge, Elon Musk, called USAID a criminal organization and added that it is time for it to die. Do you agree with that?
There's enough evidence for you guys to actually do the investigation. Can you tell me what your interaction or the interaction with US aid has been here in Guatemala?
Yes.
In the heart of El Salvador, where poverty paints the streets with the shadows of despair, there walks an angel among men, Bob McDonald. Known on social media as @BobMcDonald, Bob has dedicated his life to a cause that echoes the very essence of humanity: hope, love, and redemption. He is the founder of the organization called the House of Life, a beacon of light for the most vulnerable in society. Bob's mission is profound as it is heartbreaking. He rescues pregnant teenage girls, young girls, ages 11 to 17, who have suffered through unimaginable horrors, often raped by those who they would be protected by, their fathers, brothers, and pimps. These children, from the poorest slums of El Salvador, come to Bob not just seeking shelter, but a chance to reclaim their shattered innocence. At the House of Life, Bob doesn't just provide a safe haven. He gives these girls a new life. He nurtures them, educates them, and most importantly, he loves them as if they were his own daughter. His dedication transcends mere charity. It's a lifelong commitment to healing and empowerment. The images you are seeing on the screen have captured this love in its purest form. It's a photograph from just last week showing the first girl who ever came to the House of Life. She stands there, now a young woman with a daughter in her arms, celebrating the child's first birthday. The joy in their eyes, the shared laughter, and the undeniable bond between them speaks volumes of the transformation that Bob has facilitated. Throughout my travels across the globe, I've witnessed countless organizations striving to make a difference, yet none have touched my heart like the House of Life. Bob McDonald's work is a testament to what true altruism looks like. Here, every donation, every act of support doesn't just go towards a cause. It plants a seed of hope, nurtures growth, and fosters dreams where there was once only despair. If you can spare a cup of coffee, on Bob's website at micasakids.org, you can find the donation link. You can also find them on Bob's personal Twitter, at BobMcDonald1. Bob is the epitome of what every organization dealing with children should aspire to be. His approach is not just about survival, it's about thriving, about giving these young souls a chance to see themselves through the eyes of somebody who believes in them unconditionally. In a world often too quickly to run away from suffering, Bob stands as proof that angels do walk among us, and through his work, we are reminded of the power of love that can heal the deepest wounds.
Say thank you, thank you, thank you, 'cause I'm so grateful, oh grateful, I'm so grateful, so I wanna say thank you.